wonder how the heat affects your mood? The extreme temps of the summer can actually do quite a doozy on your mental health.
100%, 100%. We're checking in with Dr. Laura Saunders, a psychologist at the Hartford Healthcare Institute of Living, for tips on how to stay cool and balanced. Good morning, Doc. How are you?
Hello, friends. Happy Thursday. Happy early 4th of July.
Yes.
And yes, we are talking about how extreme heat can really affect your overall mental health and well-being.
All right. I know when it gets hot, I become grumpy, aggravated, and frustrated, and I might tend to take it out on other people if I'm not careful.
Yes, and so there's a difference between sort of extreme heat, right, which does really affect people. It affects mood because it affects sleep, and also warmer temps, sunshine, warmer temps versus sunshine. Like sunshine's really good for many of us. You know, the vitamin D, the things we do when we're outside, but certain medications are also affected by extreme heat or affects your body. So people who take certain medications really need to be careful about keeping themselves cooler and staying away from more higher temps.
It's so interesting we're talking about this because, you know, Scott, you love the beach.
Yep.
You know, you grew up by the beach.
Yep.
You love the summer, and yet, you know, you associate all those things like with feeling good and happy, but why is it that it can affect our mood in such an adverse way, Doc?
Well, kind of like Scott's saying, right? When it gets, you know, there's that mid-range of temps that work well for everyone. That people are outside, they're doing more things, they're socializing. But when it gets really hot, kind of like last week when it was up in the, 90s or high 90s, what it does is it really affects people's ability to regulate their body temperatures. Again, certain medications really are affected by extreme heat and then affect your ability to manage heat in certain situations. You're more likely to get heat stroke and heat exhaustion. So it really is important. And it really does affect people's overall ability to think. As I said, it disrupts their sleep and can make them more irritability and sometimes aggressive.
You know, I don't want to toot our own horn, but we do the heat risk map on during the weather segments, and that's to give people an idea whether it's going to be minor, moderate, extreme. You know, that people need to take that stuff seriously because we're giving that information out there for a reason. We want you to be safe.
Right. I think that is an excellent guideline. That is something that you need to do to know yourself, know what kind of situation you do better in, and really take the precautions that you need to take in order to protect yourself.
And let's talk about sleep. You mentioned how that can be disrupted with this extreme heat. Is it true that once it's over a certain amount of degrees at night, people can actually have lower sleep quality?
Yes, 70 degrees is considered sort of the guideline. Anything over 70, if your sleeping area is over 70 degrees, is going to be much harder to maintain your sleep and continue your sleep. So trying to keep your room area well ventilated and if possible below 70 degrees, because it'll be much easier to sleep under those temps. And,
if you can't get a good night's sleep and you wake up and you're grumpy, it affects your whole day.
Yeah, I mean, sleep and quality sleep is noted in many, many different psychiatric illnesses, not just depression and anxiety, but mood disorders as well. So your ability to get good sleep is so important. And again, it doesn't mean we're telling people not to go outside and not to do things, but to be safe about it, to know what works well for their body temp and their disposition, and to do the things that they need to do to keep themselves a little cooler.
I remember in college, everyone really, putting the air conditioning on, even like in the fall, right? Because it would get so stuffy. So it makes sense. You want it to be really cool at night. And one really, really quick question. You have less than a minute. We've seen all of this research for saunas and how it's good for your health. What's the difference between something like that kind of heat versus the heat when we step outside?
Well, that kind of heat you actually have some control over, right? You can go into that situation. It's this, it's the controlled sweating or the sweating that really can be very therapeutic and beneficial. And then you can step out. So there's the control that you have over that environment. If you start to get a little bit overheated, you exit that situation. But for a lot of people, they like both the ice bath and then the sauna as a way to kind of help them shift their mood.
Well, thanks, Doc. Have a great, happy, and safe 4th of July. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.